Have you ever wondered why Gandhi really withdrew the non-cooperation movement? I mean, when it was at its absolute peak, the British were, completely on the back foot, the jails were full, and then suddenly it just stops.
It's one of the great what-ifs of the freedom struggle, isn't it?
Exactly. Or have you ever tried to pinpoint which specific event triggered the Quit India movement, the one that UPSC examiners are looking for? Because it's not just general anger. There's always a specific trigger.
There is. And today, we aren't just reading history. We are, I think, decoding the roadmap to Indian independence.
Yes. A roadmap paved with high idealism, some very gritty politics, and some incredibly difficult choices.
And for anyone studying for the exams, it's a minefield of potential marks. You have to know the path.
You really do. Okay, so before we dive in, a quick request from us. If you find value in what we're doing here, please subscribe to the channel. And if you are capable, please consider supporting us on Patreon. It helps us keep bringing you this kind of super useful content.
We really do appreciate that support. I mean, it literally keeps the lights on and allows us to do the deep research that goes into this.
A huge shout out to all our current supporters. You guys are the absolute reason we can do this. Also, don't forget to like this video and share your valuable comment. It helps the algorithm find other people like you.
And there's more.
Oh, right. A critical resource alert. We have free notes with practice PYQs, that's previous year questions, and they are available on our public Telegram channel.
And for those who want, the full package.
Right. To get access to all the videos in this series at once, plus their corresponding premium notes, all in a really organized way, you should join us on our private Telegram library. Just DM us on the public Telegram channel to get the details to join.
The premium notes are much more detailed. They have extra PYQs, and we've even included model mains answers for you.
Okay, business aside. Let's get into it. Today we are opening the book of Tamil Nadu Board Class 12 History, specifically Chapter 16, The Indian National Movement from 1917 to 1947.
This is it. This is the big one. We're covering the third and final phase of the nationalist movement, the Gandhian Era. This is the whole stretch, from his first major actions in India all the way to independence.
And just to be clear, we are not just relying on the textbook. We are cross-referencing and analyzing actual UPSC preliminary and mains questions from 2013 all the way up to 2025 to see how these historical facts actually translate into exam marks.
Let's do it.
So let's get into it. The source material begins with, of course, the arrival of Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi.
1915. That is the year he returns to India for good. But we really have to set the context here. He didn't just, show up out of nowhere as a fully formed leader.
Right. He wasn't a rookie. I think sometimes we gloss over why he was so effective almost immediately. What was it about his time in South Africa that was so important?
It was the laboratory. It really was. He spent 20 years in South Africa fighting apartheid, this systematic state-sponsored racial discrimination. And that experience is absolutely crucial.
So he'd already tested his methods.
He wasn't testing out Satyagraha for the first time in India. He was deploying a weapon he had already forged and tempered. He knew how to organize people, he knew how to deal with being in jail, and crucially, he knew how to negotiate with the British legal system.
That's a key point.
It is. He understood the psychology of the oppressor just as well as he understood the psychology of the oppressed. He was already a seasoned political strategist before he even set foot on the Indian political stage.
So he arrives, but he doesn't immediately try to launch a national revolution. He actually spends a year just touring the country, right?
I think it was on the advice of his political guru, Gopal Krishna Gokhale.
Exactly. Gokhal's advice was, keep your ears open and your mouth shut for a year. And he did. He needed to understand the pulse of the country. India is, vast, complex, deeply stratified. You can't lead it if you don't know it.
And his entry into Indian politics wasn't through some massive national declaration. It was through these small local grievances, these early experiments. Yes. And chronology is king here. For any exam, you absolutely have to know the order of these first three events. Champaran, then Kheda, and then the Ahmedabad mill strike.
Okay, let's hit Champaran first, 1917. What was the specific problem there?
This was in the Champaran district of Bihar. The issue was a system called the Tinkithya system.
Tinkithya.
Basically, the European indigo planters were forcing the local peasants to grow indigo on at least 320ths of their land. And worse, they had to sell that indigo at fixed, dirt-cheap rates set by the planters.
So it was essentially forced labor combined with price fixing.
Precisely. And what made it even worse was that the German invention of synthetic dye had crashed the global market for indigo. But the planters, to cover their own losses, were still squeezing the peasants with these oppressive contracts.
So Gandhi goes there. What does he do?
He goes there at the request of a local man named Rajkumar Shukla, and the first thing that happens is the district magistrate serves him an order to leave the district immediately.
And he refuses.
He politely refuses. And that is key. He disobeyed an unjust order. This was the first act of civil disobedience in India. He wasn't violent. He just said, I will not obey.
And it worked. The government was forced to back down.
It did. They actually set up a committee of inquiry, and they made Gandhi a member of it. In the end, the Tinkathia system was abolished. It was a huge victory.
So that's the first test case. Then comes 1918. 2 events here, right?
Yes, first, the Kheda Satyagraha in Gujarat.
This was about taxes, wasn't it?
It was. There was a massive crop failure because of a drought. The peasants simply couldn't pay the land tax. Now, the British Revenue Code itself had a specific rule. If the crop yield is less than 25% of the normal, the farmers are entitled to a full remission. They don't have to pay.
But the government just ignored their own rule.
They said, no, pay up. So Gandhi, along with some other leaders, supported the peasants in their refusal to pay. And here's a little nugget for you. This is where Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel really steps onto the national stage.
Oh, right. He wasn't the Iron Man yet.
Not at all. He was a very successful westernized lawyer in Ahmedabad. He gave up his lucrative practice to follow Gandhi during this campaign. He was the one doing the legwork, going village to village, organizing the peasants.
And the third one, the Ahmedabad mill strike, also in 1918. This one was different.
Very different. Because it wasn't against the British government directly. It was a dispute between Indian mill workers and Indian mill owners. The issue was something called the plague bonus.
The plague bonus, that sounds incredibly dystopian.
It does, doesn't it? There had been a plague outbreak in Ahmedabad. To convince workers to stay in the city and not flee, the owners had offered a bonus. When the plague epidemic ended, they wanted to withdraw it.
But the workers still needed the money.
Desperately. Because of World War I, inflation was huge. The cost of living had almost doubled. The workers were demanding a 50% wage hike, and the owners were offering only 20%.
So Gandhi steps in.
He does. And this is where he uses the weapon of the fast unto death for the first time in India, a hunger strike.
Against the mill owners. That seems extreme, especially since some of them were his friends.
It was a form of intense moral pressure. And you're right, Ambalal Sarabhai, one of the main mill owners, was a close friend of Gandhi. In fact, his sister, Anusuya Sarabhai, was actually one of the main leaders on the workers' side.
Wow, that must have been complicated.
Very.
Yep.
But the fast worked. It shamed the owners into a compromise. They agreed to a 35% wage increase, and the strike was called off.
So if you put these 3 events together, Champaran, Kheda, Ahmedabad, what's the big takeaway? Why do these 3 local disputes matter so much in the grand scheme of things?
Because they connected Gandhi to the masses. Before this, the Indian National Congress was largely a club of elite, English-speaking lawyers and intellectuals who would meet in big cities during the winter holidays to pass resolutions.
Right. It wasn't a mass organization.
Not at all. Champaran, Kheda, and Ahmedabad. These campaigns brought Gandhi to the grassroots. He became the leader of the peasants, the farmers, the factory workers. He became their undisputed leader. He wasn't just a politician anymore. To them, he was becoming a Mahatma.
Okay, and this is where it gets really interesting for the exam. We have some serious PYQ linkage right here.
We do. If you look at the 2025 Civil Services prelims, there was a question that referenced the famous quote from Gandhi, "Sedition has become my religion."
Ooh, that's a powerful statement. Very strong words. That sounds like something a revolutionary would say.
Very. And students often get confused about when he actually said this. It's technically from the Great Trial of 1922, which we will get to later. But the roots of that defiance, that willingness to challenge the moral authority of an unjust law, they start right here, in these early experiments where he openly defied the orders of district magistrates.
And I remember seeing something about Marxism as well, a comparison.
Yes, that was the 2020 prelims. A fascinating question. It asked for the common point of agreement between Gandhism and Marxism.
Which seems strange. They seem like polar opposites. One is all about nonviolence. The other? Well, revolutionary Marxism usually involves a violent class struggle.
True. Their methods were completely fundamentally different. But the correct answer was the final goal of a stateless society.
A stateless society.
Yes. Both Gandhi and Marx, in their own ways, imagined an ultimate utopia where the coercive apparatus of the state, the police, the army, the courts, is no longer needed because people have learned to regulate themselves. Gandhi called it Ram Raja. Marx called it the highest stage of communism. It's a really interesting philosophical overlap that the UPSC loves to test.
Okay, so Gandhi has arrived. He's tested the waters with these local movements. Now we move to the real turning point, 1919, the year everything changed.
1919 is the watershed year, without a doubt. And it starts with the Rowlatt Act in March of that year.
The infamous Black Act.
Yes. And you have to understand the British mindset here. World War I had just ended. They were terrified of two things: the Russian Revolution, spreading its influence, and a resurgence of Indian revolutionary activities. You know, the Gandhiites, the revolutionaries in Bengal.
So they wanted to keep their wartime powers.
Exactly. They set up a sedition committee led by a judge, Sir Sidney Rowlatt, and based on his report, they passed this act to extend the draconian wartime restrictions into peacetime.
What specifically made it so bad? What did it allow?
It gave the police immense arbitrary powers. They could arrest anyone purely on suspicion, without a warrant, and they could detain that person without trial for up to 2 years.
And that's where the famous description came from, right? No appeal, no vakil, no dalil.
No appeal, no lawyer, no argument. Precisely. It basically stripped away the right of habeas corpus, the most fundamental right to personal liberty. It was a complete mockery of the rule of law.
So Gandhi's response was to organize a Satyagraha against it.
The Rowlatt Satyagraha. He called for an all-India hartal, a general strike, which was observed on April 6, 1919. And this is important. This was the first all-India mass protest he had ever organized. The struggle was no longer just local.
But then things took a very, very dark turn, especially in Punjab.
The darkest turn. April 13, 1919, Jallianwala Bagh.
Even just saying the name sends shivers down your spine. Can you set the scene for us? What happened?
It was Baisakhi Day, a major Sikh harvest festival. A large, peaceful crowd had gathered in this enclosed ground in Amritsar called Jallianwala Bagh. It's really important to picture the geography. It was a large open space, but it was surrounded by high walls with only one very narrow exit.
And it was a mixed crowd.
Yes. Some people were there to peacefully protest the recent arrest of two popular local leaders, Dr. Saifuddin Kichlu and Dr. Satyapal. But many others were just villagers from the surrounding areas who had come into the city for the Baisakhi fair and had no idea that a public meeting ban was in effect.
And then General Dyer arrived.
General Reginald Dyer. He marched in with his troops. He didn't give any warning. He didn't ask the crowd to disperse. He blocked the only exit with his soldiers to make sure no one could escape.
So he trapped them.
He trapped them. And then, without any provocation, he ordered his men to open fire into the densest part of the crowd.
For how long did they fire?
For about 10 to 15 minutes straight. They only stopped because they ran out of ammunition. About 13,750 rounds were fired. The official British estimate, which is widely considered a massive understatement, was 379 dead. The real number was likely well over 1,000 people, men, women, and children.
This wasn't crowd control. This was a calculated massacre.
It was a calculated act of terror. Dyer later boasted to the Hunter Commission, the official inquiry, that he did it to produce a moral effect and to teach the Indians a lesson. But the lesson the Indians learned was not one of submission.
What was the lesson then?
The lesson was that the British claim to a superior sense of justice was a complete sham. The mask of the civilizing mission had slipped off, and underneath it was just brute, naked force.
The fallout must have been immediate and immense.
It was. Rabindranath Tagore renounced his knighthood in protest, writing a powerful, scathing letter to the viceroy. Gandhi returned his Kaiseri Hind Medal, which he had received for his ambulance work during the Boer War. The trust between the rulers and the ruled was broken. Forever.
And right in the middle of all this anger and turmoil, we have the Khilafat issue coming up. Now, this is something that always confuses people. Why were Indian Muslims so angry about what was happening in Turkey?
It's all geopolitical. The Ottoman Empire, which was based in Turkey, fought on the side of Germany in World War I, and they lost. Now, the Sultan of Turkey was not just a political ruler. He was also the Caliph, the Khalifa, who was considered the spiritual head of the entire Sunni Islamic world.
Okay, so he was a hugely important religious figure.
Hugely important. And after the war, the victorious British and their allies were dismembering the Ottoman Empire and treating the Caliph with deep disrespect. They were planning to abolish the Caliphate itself.
So Indian Muslims felt that their supreme religious leader was being humiliated by the very same British government that was oppressing them at home.
Exactly. The Ali brothers Maulana Shaukat Ali and Muhammad Ali formed the Khilafat Committee in India. Their goal was to pressure the British government to preserve the caliphate and protect the holy places of Islam.
And Gandhi saw an opening here. But Was this controversial, this idea of mixing a purely religious issue with a nationalist political struggle?
Extremely controversial. Even within the Congress, leaders like Muhammad Ali Jinnah warned against it, saying it would bring religious fanaticism into politics. But Gandhi saw a golden opportunity.
For what?
He famously said it was an opportunity that would not come again in 100 years to forge lasting Hindu-Muslim unity. He convinced the Congress to support the Khilafat demand and to merge it with the national anger over the Jallianwala Bagh massacre and the Rowlatt Act.
So this trifecta, the Punjab wrongs, the Khilafat wrongs, and the overarching demand for Swaraj, this became the foundation for the non-cooperation movement.
Correct. Which leads us right into part 3, the non-cooperation movement. From 1920 to 1922, this is the big one. The first attempt to bring the entire British Raj to a grinding halt peacefully.
It was formally launched after getting approval at the Nagpur session of the Congress in December 1920. So what was the plan? What was the actual program? How do you non-cooperate with an entire empire?
You unplug the system. The fundamental idea was that the British ruled India only with the help and cooperation of Indians. So if Indians simply withdrew their cooperation, the entire administration would collapse.
So what did that mean in practice?
The program was comprehensive. On one side, there was the boycott. Surrender all titles and honors given by the British. Boycott government schools and colleges.
And that led to a boom in national schools, right?
Yes. Institutions that are famous today like Jamia Millia Islamia, Bihar Vidyapeeth, Kashi Vidyapeeth, they were all set up during this time so that students who walked out of government colleges had an alternative. Subhas Chandra Bose actually became the principal of the National College in Calcutta.
Then there was the boycott of the courts.
This was a huge one. Prominent, wealthy lawyers like Motilal Nehru, C.R. Das, Vallabhbhai Patel, they all gave up their incredibly lucrative legal practices. It was a massive personal and financial sacrifice.
And of course, the boycott of foreign goods.
That was the most visible part of the movement. You had these enormous bonfires of foreign cloth in cities and towns across the country. And on the other side, the constructive side, was the promotion of khadi, hand-spun, hand-woven cloth, and the charkha, the spinning wheel.
The charkha became a symbol.
It became the symbol of economic self-reliance and national pride. If you wore khadi, you were making a powerful political statement. It became the uniform of the nationalists.
The textbook mentions that the Prince of Wales visited India in 1921. How did that go?
It was a disaster for the British. He was greeted with empty streets and hardles wherever he went. It was a massive public relations embarrassment for the empire. The movement was surging. It wasn't just the urban elite anymore. Peasants were refusing to pay taxes. Tribes in Andhra were breaking forest laws. Tea plantation workers in Assam were on strike. It felt like the country was on the verge of something huge.
But then, it just stops. And this brings us to that critical question that has haunted students and historians for decades. Why stop the movement when the momentum is so high? Why pull the plug when you seem to be winning?
The Chaura incident, February 5th, 1922.
Can you tell us exactly what happened there?
It was a small town in the Gorakhpur district of what is now Uttar Pradesh. A local procession of protesters was fired upon by the police. The crowd, which was large and enraged and clearly lacked the discipline of nonviolence that Gandhi demanded, just went berserk.
What did they do?
They chased the policemen, who took refuge inside the local police station. The mob then locked the doors of the station from the outside and set the building on fire.
That is just horrific.
It was. 22 policemen were burned alive.
So Gandhi hears about this. What is his immediate reaction?
He is utterly devastated. He believed that the movement had turned violent, and for him, that was a cardinal sin. He famously said he had committed a Himalayan blunder by launching a mass movement without properly training the people in the principles of nonviolence.
And he called it off. Just like that.
On February 11th, 1922, the Congress Working Committee met at Bardoli and, at Gandhi's insistence, passed a resolution to call off the entire non-cooperation movement across the country.
People must have been furious. I mean, just imagine you're a student who quit college for the cause or a lawyer who gave up your entire career and suddenly the leader says, okay, we're done, go home.
Furious is an understatement. Leaders like Motilal Nehru, Subhas Chandra Bose, Jawaharlal Nehru, they were all in jail at the time and they were stunned and bewildered. Subhas Chandra Bose called it a national calamity.
He felt the movement was on the verge of success.
They did. Their argument was, why penalize the entire country for the crime of one small village? But Gandhi was adamant.
What was his reasoning? Why was he so uncompromising on this?
He had a few reasons. Firstly, on a moral level, he believed that a Swaraj obtained through violence was not true Swaraj. The means were just as important as the ends. But practically, he also believed that if the movement turned violent, it would give the British the perfect moral excuse to use massive, overwhelming military force to crush it completely.
So it just devolved into a chaotic riot.
A riot that the British, with their army and machine guns, could easily suppress. He felt it would lead to immense bloodshed and set the freedom struggle back by decades. He was playing the long game.
Okay, let's connect this to the exams. How does the UPSC see this movement?
Well, the 2015 mains had a question about the evolution of national identity in India. And the non-cooperation movement, or NCM, is the absolute key pivot point. It was the first true mass movement.
More so than the Swadeshi movement of 1905.
Much more so. The Swadeshi movement was largely confined to Bengal. It was mostly an urban middle-class affair. NCM, on the other hand, involved peasants, workers, women, students, tribals from all parts of the country. It transformed the Congress from a deliberative assembly into a genuine revolutionary organization with a mass base.
And what about the goal of Swaraj?
That's a great point. You can link this to a 2019 prelims question about the evolution of Congress goals. During the NCM, the goal was Swaraj, but the definition of Swaraj was still a bit vague. Gandhi had promised Swaraj in 1 year if his program was followed. And that didn't happen. But what did happen was that the mental shackles were broken. The fear of the British Raj was gone, perhaps for the first time.
So the movement is called off. Gandhi is arrested in March 1922. That's when he gives his famous "Sedition is my religion" speech at his trial. And he's sentenced to 6 years in jail, though he's released early due to poor health. This leaves a political void, doesn't it?
A huge void. And this leads to what we can call the period of the void and the resurgence, from about 1923 to 1929. With Gandhi in jail, the Congress actually split into two camps over strategy. You had the pro-changers and the no-changers.
Okay, break that down for us. Who are the pro-changers?
They were led by figures like C.R. Das and Motilal Nehru. Their argument was, look, the mass movement has been called off. We need to change our tactics. They wanted to end the boycott of the legislative councils.
So they wanted to get into politics.
Their idea was to enter the legislative councils not to cooperate, but to wreck them from within, to use the councils as a platform for obstructionism and to expose their limitations. They formed the Swaraj Party to contest the elections.
And the no-changers.
They're the hardline Gandhians, people like Rajendra Prasad, C. Rajagopalachari, and Vallabhbhai Patel. They argued that they should stick to Gandhi's constructive program. Things like spinning khadi, fighting untouchability, promoting Hindu-Muslim unity, setting up local panchayats. Their focus was on social reform and preparing the masses in the villages for the next round of mass struggle.
So you have this internal friction within the Congress, but then the British do something that gives everyone a reason to unite again. The Simon Commission.
1927. The British government appoints the Indian Statutory Commission, led by Sir John Simon.
What was its purpose?
Under the Government of India Act of 1919, a review was supposed to happen after 10 years to see how the constitutional reforms were working. The Conservative government in Britain, fearing a loss to the Labour Party, decided to appoint the commission 2 years early.
Sounds like a standard bureaucratic procedure. Why did it cause such an outrage?
Because it was an all-white commission. 7 lawyers, all of them British. Not a single Indian was included to help decide the future constitution of India.
That's just insulting.
It was seen as a grave national insult. Lord Birkenhead, the Secretary of State for India, basically taunted Indians, saying they were incapable of agreeing on a constitutional framework among themselves.
And the slogan was born, "Go back, Simon."
Exactly. That became the rallying cry. Everywhere the commission went. Bombay, Lahore, Madras, Calcutta. They were met with massive protests, black flags, and hurdles.
And for our exam-focused listeners, this is a very hot topic for PYQs.
Absolutely. The 2013 prelims had a direct question about what the Simon Commission eventually recommended. And the answer was that it recommended the abolition of diarchy in the provinces and the establishment of representative government.
Diarchy was that weird system where some subjects were transferred to Indian ministers and the important ones, like finance and police, were reserved for the British.
That's the one. Simon said, scrap that, give the provinces full autonomy.
Yeah.
But the real issue for Indians wasn't the recommendation, it was the process. There was another question that just asked why it was boycotted, and the simple answer is because it had no Indian member.
The protests against the commission often turned violent because of the police response. The Lathi charges.
Yes. And tragically, in Lahore, the great nationalist leader Lala Lajpat Rai was severely beaten on the chest during a Lathi charge while leading a protest. He died from his injuries a few weeks later.
And his death had its own consequences.
It did. It famously prompted Bhagat Singh and his comrades in the HSRA to assassinate the police officer, Saunders, whom they held responsible. So you can see the political temperature is rising again across the country.
Meanwhile, the British had thrown down a challenge. If you don't like our commission, why don't you draft a constitution that all of you can agree on?
And the Indian leaders accepted that challenge. This led to the Nehru Report of 1928. An all-parties conference appointed a committee chaired by Motilal Nehru to draft a constitution for India.
What was its main demand?
It demanded dominion status for India. Basically, self-government within the British Empire, similar to the status of Canada or Australia at the time.
But not everyone was happy with just dominion status.
No. The younger generation of nationalists, especially Jawaharlal Nehru, Motilal's own son, and Subhas Chandra Bose, were furious. They said, dominion status is not enough. We want Purna Swaraj, complete independence, a total break from the British Empire.
And on the other side, Jinnah and the Muslim League also had issues with the Nehru Report.
Yes, the report rejected the idea of separate electorates for Muslims, which had been in place since 1909. Jinnah felt it didn't offer adequate safeguards for minority rights and proposed his own 14 points as an alternative. The Congress rejected them. So the unity that had been forged back in 1920 was clearly fracturing along communal lines.
This sets the stage for the Lahore session of the Congress in December 1929. This is a historic one, where the torch really passes to the new generation.
This is where the goalposts move, permanently. Jawaharlal Nehru, representing the younger, more radical faction, is the president of the session. As the clock strikes midnight on December 31st, 1929, on the banks of the River Ravi, the Congress officially passes the Purna Swaraj resolution.
Complete independence. The goal is now clear.
Absolutely. And they also decided that January 26, 1930 would be celebrated across the country as the first Independence Day.
Which is, of course, why we now celebrate our Republic Day on January 26th, to honor the memory of that historic declaration.
Precisely. And again, a direct PYQ from 2014 asked why the 1929 Lahore session was significant. The answer is straightforward. The attainment of Purna Swaraj was adopted as the official goal of the Congress.
So the goal is now set in stone, but they need a plan, a new mass movement to achieve it. This brings us to Part 5, the civil disobedience movement.
And Gandhi is back in the driver's seat. The Congress Working Committee authorizes him to launch the movement, and he chooses a very peculiar, very unexpected target to kick things off: salt.
Salt, of all the things, why not land tax again? Or military spending, why salt?
It was a stroke of absolute genius, because salt was something that every single Indian, whether they were Hindu or Muslim, rich or poor, from the north or the south, used every single day.
And the British had a monopoly on it.
They had a state monopoly on its manufacture, and they imposed a tax on it. So the salt tax was a tangible, everyday symbol of British exploitation that affected every single household. It was the perfect issue to unite the entire country.
So the Dandi March begins.
March 12, 1930. Gandhi, then 61 years old, sets out from his Sabarmati ashram with 78 of his followers. They begin to walk the 240 miles to the coastal village of Dandi.
The press coverage was insane, wasn't it? The whole world was watching this old man in a loincloth walking to the sea to challenge the mightiest empire on earth.
It was. And on April 6, 1930, and note the date, it was the anniversary of the Rowlatt Hartal, he reached the coast, bent down, and picked up a lump of natural salt from the shore. Technically, in that moment, he became a criminal. He had broken the British salt law.
And that one simple act was the signal that set the entire country on fire.
Everywhere, people started making salt illegally. There was widespread picketing of liquor shops and shops selling foreign cloth. In eastern India, people refused to pay the Chowkidari tax. In the central provinces, people violated the forest laws.
Now, since we are using the Tamil Nadu board book as our source, we have to mention the Vedaranyam March.
Absolutely crucial. While Gandhi was marching to Dandi, the veteran leader C. Rajagopalachari, or Rajaji, organized a similar march in Tamil Nadu. He led a group of Satyagrahis from Tiruchirappalli to Vedaranyam on the Tanjore coast to make salt.
So it showed that this wasn't just a phenomenon in Gujarat. It was truly a national movement.
It was. And the government's response was predictable, brutal repression, but also confusion. They arrested Gandhi. They arrested Nehru. Tens of thousands of people were put in jail. In fact, the Congress was declared an illegal organization. That's a point from the 2019 prelims. Consequent upon the breaking of salt law, the Indian National Congress was declared illegal.
But the British quickly realized they couldn't just arrest their way out of this crisis. They had to talk. And this leads to the Roundtable Conferences in London.
The first Roundtable Conference was held in London in late 1930, but the Congress boycotted it. So it was like trying to stage a production of Hamlet without the Prince of Denmark. It was a complete flop.
They realized they needed Gandhi at the table.
They needed the Congress. So the Viceroy, Lord Irwin, began negotiations with Gandhi. This resulted in the Gandhi-Irwin Pact in March 1931.
This was a very controversial pact, wasn't it?
Very. Under the pact, Gandhi agreed to suspend the civil disobedience movement and to attend the Second Round Table Conference in London. In return, the government agreed to release all political prisoners. But, and this is the key point, only those who were not charged with violence.
And that's the sticking point. Because at that very moment, Bhagat Singh, Sukhdev, and Rajguru were on death row for the assassination of Saunders. They were not released. They were hanged just a few days after the pact was signed.
And many radicals and young people in the country felt that Gandhi had betrayed the cause, that he could have done more to save them. It's a heavy and complex debate.
So Gandhi goes to London for the second RTC.
He goes as the sole representative of the Congress. But he came back empty-handed. The conference got completely bogged down in the communal question. How many seats should be reserved for Muslims, for Sikhs, for Christians, for Anglo-Indians? The British played the divide and rule card perfectly.
So he comes back and resumes the movement.
He does. But the momentum was lost. And this time, the new viceroy, Lord Wellington, was ready. The government launched a ruthless crackdown and crushed the movement within a few months.
And then the British Prime Minister, Ramsay MacDonald, drops a bombshell, the Communal Award, in August 1932.
This was a dangerous move. He announced that he was extending the system of separate electorates not just to Muslims and Sikhs, but also to the depressed classes, what we now call the Dalits.
Can you just briefly explain what separate electorates means for the listener?
It means that for seats reserved for a particular community, only members of that community can vote. So only Muslims would vote for Muslim candidates, only Sikhs for Sikh candidates. Gandhi saw this as a sinister plot to permanently divide Hindu society and to ensure that the problem of untouchability was politically cemented forever.
And he was in jail at the time.
He was in Jallianwala jail in Poona, and from his cell he announced a fast unto death in protest against the communal award.
This put immense pressure on Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, didn't it?
Immense. Dr. Ambedkar was the undisputed leader of the depressed classes, and he had fought hard for these political safeguards to protect his people from centuries of upper caste oppression. But now, if Gandhi died, the resulting emotional backlash against the Dalits across the country could be catastrophic.
So they were forced to negotiate. This leads to the Poona Pact of 1932.
Yes, a compromise was reached. Dr. Ambedkar agreed to give up the demand for separate electorates. In exchange, the number of seats reserved for the depressed classes within the general Hindu electorate was significantly increased, from 71 seats offered by the British to 148.
So it was a victory for political integration, but it also shifted the focus of the national movement for a while.
It did. After this, Gandhi largely withdrew from active politics for a few years and focused on his social reform work, specifically the anti-untouchability campaign and his Harijan movement.
Linking this period to the exams, I remember a question in the 2018 mains about the women's question in modern India.
Yes, and the civil disobedience movement is a key milestone there. Thousands upon thousands of women participated. They picketed liquor shops, they marched in processions, they went to jail. Sarojini Naidu even led the famous raid on the Darasan salt works after Gandhi was arrested. It brought women out of the domestic sphere and into the political front line in a way that had never happened before.
Okay, let's move forward in time. Part 6. The world is on fire again. It's 1939, World War II breaks out.
This is the beginning of the end for the British Empire, although they didn't know it yet. When the war started, the Viceroy, Lord Linlithgow, made a fateful announcement. He declared that India was at war with Germany.
Without asking a single Indian leader.
Without consulting anyone. The Congress ministries, which had been elected in several provinces in 1937 under the Government of India Act of 1935, all resigned in protest. Their argument was simple. We cannot fight for freedom and democracy abroad when we are denied it at home.
But the British desperately needed Indian cooperation for the war effort, so they started making offers.
First came the August offer in 1940. The Viceroy offered a vague promise of a representative body to frame a new constitution after the war, and an expansion of his Executive Council. The Congress rejected it as too little, too late.
And Gandhi launched the individual Satyagraha.
Yes, but note the name, individual. Why not a mass movement?
Why not?
Because Gandhi did not want to embarrass the British war effort with a large-scale movement while they were engaged in a life-and-death struggle against Nazi Germany. He wanted to register a moral protest, not cripple them. So he handpicked individuals to offer Satyagraha,
Acharya Vinoba Bhave was the first.
and Jawaharlal Nehru was the second. They would make an anti-war speech, get arrested, and that was it. It was a symbolic protest.
But by 1942, the situation had changed dramatically. The war was at India's doorstep.
The Japanese were sweeping through Southeast Asia. They had taken Singapore, Malaya, and Burma. They were literally knocking on the gates of Bengal. The British were panicked.
So they sent Sir Stafford Cripps to India. The Cripps mission, March 1942.
They were now willing to offer a lot more. Cripps came with a proposal that offered dominion status and the right to frame a constitution. But again, only after the war was over.
There's that pattern again. Help us win the war now and we'll pay you later.
Exactly. And this is when Gandhi made his famous comment, calling the offer a post-dated check on a crashing bank. The British Empire looked like it was collapsing. Why would Indians accept a promise for the future from a bank that might not even exist tomorrow?
Plus, the Cripps proposal also had a clause that allowed any province that was not willing to join the new Indian Union to opt out. It was seen as a blueprint for the balkanization of India.
Exactly. So the Cripps mission failed. The talks broke down. And now Gandhi's entire attitude shifted. No more "don't embarrass the British." He now felt that the British presence in India was an invitation for Japan to invade. If the British left, India could either negotiate with Japan or defend itself.
So, August 8, 1942, the All India Congress Committee meets at Gowalia Tank Maidan in Bombay.
And the historic Quit India resolution is passed. That night, Gandhi delivers his most fiery and powerful speech. He gives the nation a new mantra: do or die. Karenj ya Marenj. He said, "We shall either free India or die in the attempt."
And the British response was incredibly swift.
Before the sun even rose on August 9th, they launched Operation 0 Hour. Gandhi, Nehru, Patel, Azad, every single top leader of the Congress was arrested and whisked away to unknown locations.
So the movement was left completely leaderless.
And that is what makes the Quit India movement so unique. It became a spontaneous, leaderless revolt. With the top leaders gone, the younger generation and local leaders took over. People like Aruna Asaf Ali, who hoisted the tricolor flag at Gowalia Tank. Usha Mehta, who ran a secret underground radio station to keep morale up. Jayaprakash Narayan, who escaped from prison to organize guerrilla warfare.
And this time, it was not strictly nonviolent.
Not at all. People attacked police stations, post offices, they blew up railway tracks and cut telegraph lines to disrupt communication. And in several places, parallel governments were established.
What does a parallel government actually mean? What did they do?
In places like Ballia in UP, Tamluk in Bengal, and especially in Satara in Maharashtra, the British administration completely collapsed. The local revolutionaries set up their own governments, their own courts, their own police forces. In Satara, this Prati Sarkar ran for months, effectively declaring independence.
Let's bring in the Tamil Nadu connection from the textbook.
The movement was very strong in the south as well. There were major strikes in the Buckingham and Carnatic Mills and the port trusts in Madras, and the veteran leader K. Kamaraj played a very significant role in organizing the underground activities in the region. It was by no means just a North Indian phenomenon.
And for the exam, the 2024 mains asked a very direct question. What were the events that led to the Quit India movement? Point out its results.
So you have to mention the failure of the Cripps mission, the growing fear of a Japanese invasion, and also the severe economic distress and inflation caused by the war. And as for the results, the most important one was that it made it crystal clear to the British that they could no longer rule India against the will of its people. The loyalty of the Indian police and administration was shaken to its core. It was the final nail in the coffin of the British Raj.
Now, while all this was happening inside India, there was someone fighting for India's freedom from the outside. Part 7. The Final Countdown and the INA.
Subhas Chandra Bose, Netaji. He had made a daring escape from house arrest in Calcutta in 1941, traveled across Afghanistan to Germany, and then took an incredible submarine journey to Japan to seek the help of the Axis powers.
It sounds like something out of a spy movie.
It absolutely is. In Southeast Asia, he took command of the Indian National Army, the INA, which was mainly composed of Indian prisoners of war captured by the Japanese. He gave the stirring calls of "Dilli Chalo," march to Delhi, and "Give me blood and I will give you freedom."
And the INA actually fought against the British on the Burma border.
They did. They fought alongside the Japanese army and even managed to raise the Indian tricolor flag on Indian soil in Moirang in Manipur. Ultimately, they were defeated as the tide of the war turned against the Axis powers. But their real impact was psychological.
You mean the INA trials?
Exactly. After the war, the British decided to hold a public trial of 3 INA officers, Prem Sehgal, Gurbaksh Singh Dhillon, and Shah Nawaz Khan at the Red Fort in Delhi.
A Hindu, a Sikh, and a Muslim. The symbolism was perfect.
It was. And the entire country, regardless of religion or political affiliation, rose up in their defense. There were massive protests. The British had miscalculated badly. They realized that the Indian Army, which had always been their ultimate tool of control, could no longer be relied upon to suppress the Indian people.
And then on top of that, you had the Royal Indian Navy Mutiny in 1946. Sailors on the HMIS Talwar in Bombay went on strike.
That was it. The British knew the game was up. They could no longer hold India by force. The decision was made to leave.
So the exit plan begins. They send the cabinet mission in 1946.
3 high-ranking British cabinet members, Pethick Lawrence, Stafford Cripps, and A.V. Alexander. They came to negotiate the peaceful transfer of power. They actually rejected the demand for Pakistan initially. They proposed a complex 3-tiered federal structure for India with groups of provinces.
And it almost worked, didn't it?
It almost did. Both the Congress and the Muslim League accepted it at first. But then disagreements arose over the interpretation of the grouping clause, whether provinces were forced to join these groups or could opt out. Trust broke down completely. Jinnah and the Muslim League withdrew their acceptance and launched Direct Action Day on August 16, 1946, to demand Pakistan.
And that led to the Great Calcutta Killings.
Horrific communal riots. Thousands were killed. The violence spread to other parts of the country. India was sliding into a bloody civil war. In this atmosphere, the new Labour Prime Minister in Britain, Clement Attlee, made a historic announcement. Britain would leave India by June 1948 at the latest.
And he sent the last viceroy, Lord Mountbatten, to oversee the transfer of power.
Mountbatten arrived, took one look at the escalating violence and the complete political deadlock, and concluded that partition was now unavoidable. He also decided that they couldn't wait until 1948. He advanced the date of independence to August 1947.
The Mountbatten Plan was essentially the plan for partition.
The June 3rd Plan. India would be divided. The provinces of Punjab and Bengal, which had mixed populations, would also be partitioned. A boundary commission was set up under a British lawyer named Sir Cyril Radcliffe, a man who had never been to India before, and he was given just 5 weeks to draw the line on a map.
5 weeks to divide a subcontinent.
And so, on August 15, 1947, India became independent. But it was a birth that was scarred by the immense tragedy and bloodshed of partition.
And Gandhi himself wasn't celebrating in Delhi on that day.
No. He was in Noakhali, in Bengal, walking barefoot from village to village, trying to douse the flames of communal hatred and stop the killing. And then, tragically, just a few months later, on January 30th, 1948, he was assassinated by Nathuram Godse. As Nehru said, the light has gone out of our lives.
Before we wrap up, we need to do justice to our primary source, the Tamil Nadu Board Book. It dedicates specific space to Tamil Nadu's contribution, which is often overlooked. Who are the key figures we absolutely must remember?
Well, we've already mentioned Rajaji and Kamaraj, who were central figures. But going back a bit earlier, you have to know about V.O. Chidambaram Pillai, popularly known as VOC.
The Kapiladiya Tamilan, the Tamil helmsman.
A true hero of the Swadeshi era, around 1906. He did something incredible. He started the Swadeshi Steam Navigation Company to compete directly with the British shipping monopoly between Tuticorin and Colombo. It was an act of both economic and political defiance.
And the British response was brutal.
They systematically destroyed his business and threw him in jail on sedition charges, and his treatment in prison was horrific. He was yoked to an oil press, like a bullock, and forced to pull it in the hot sun. His sacrifice is a legendary tale of heroism in Tamil Nadu.
And you also have Subramania Bharathi,
the great poet of the revolution. His patriotic songs and poems in Tamil fired up the imagination of the youth and inspired them to join the freedom struggle. He had to live in exile in French-controlled Pondicherry for many years to escape British arrest, but he continued to guide the movement from there.
And the Tirunelveli Uprising.
That was in 1908. It was a major riot that broke out in reaction to the arrest of VOC and another nationalist leader, Subramania Siva. It was one of the earliest large-scale violent uprisings in the South against British rule.
Okay, let's zoom out. We've covered 30 tumultuous years of history. If we connect all these dots, what is the core takeaway from this entire period?
The main takeaway, I think, is that the Indian national movement in the Gandhian era wasn't just about transferring political power from white hands to brown hands. It was fundamentally about the process of nation building.
What do you mean by that?
Before this period, India was in many ways just a geographical expression, a collection of regions and communities. The Gandhian movement, for all its complexities, was the first thing that really united the peasant in Bihar with the mill worker in Ahmedabad, the lawyer in Allahabad with the merchant in Bombay, and the women in the household with the students in the streets. It created a sense of a shared identity, a we.
So it transformed a political negotiation into a moral and social revolution.
Precisely. And for anyone studying for the exams, it's vital to remember the interplay of all the different forces. The moderates set the constitutional stage, the extremists brought the passion, Gandhi gave it the mass base, and the revolutionaries and the INA provided that final, crucial push. You need all of those elements to explain why independence happened, when, and how it did.
All right, let's end with a provocative thought. Something for you, the listener, to mull over.
The textbook rightly highlights Gandhi's post-dated Czech comment about the Cripps mission. But consider this. After independence, the British Prime Minister at the time, Clement Attlee, was asked what the single biggest reason for their decision to leave India was. He apparently said that the impact of Gandhi's nonviolent movement was minimal. The real reasons, he suggested, were the erosion of loyalty in the Indian Army, exemplified by the INA and the Navy Mutiny. So here's the thought. Was nonviolence the weapon that ultimately won India's freedom? Or was it the ever-present threat that if the British didn't listen to the nonviolent leaders, the forces of violence, which were always simmering just below the surface, would take over? The real story might lie in the complex, uncomfortable interplay between the two.
That is a heavy thought to end on. History is never as simple as Satyagraha 1.
Never.
Okay, that is it for this deep dive. We really hope this roadmap helps you navigate Chapter 16 and all those tricky PYQs that come from it.
Remember the details. The chronology, the names of the leaders, the key resolutions, that's where the marks really are.
And remember, to get the premium notes with the detailed mains answers and all the extra PYQs we discussed, join our private Telegram library. Just DM us on the public channel for the details. Please subscribe, support us on Patreon if you can, and give a shout out to our supporters in the comments. Like, share, and keep learning.
We'll see you in the next one.
Take care.